Hi everyone, this is For the Love of Comics, and in this episode we'll be continuing our multi-episode tour of our bookshelves looking at our entire comics collection. We've done 3 shelves so far, which you can find along with a brief introduction onto the whys and the wherefores of making these videos in this playlist linked above, as well as in the description below, as well as on the playlists on our channel pages. Check those out if you haven't already. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at shelf 5. That's right, not shelf 4, no matter what the title may say for the first couple of weeks, and that's because I've had a really busy time and I've been traveling for work and to meet up with family. There's been the festival of Diwali and holidays over here, and I just got back home yesterday and I realized there's no way I'm getting shelf 4, which is right behind me over here, done in time for my weekly upload. So instead I decided to move on to shelf 5, which is a smaller shelf and has thicker hardcovers on it, which should be faster to cover, and leave shelf 4 for when I have a little bit more time and attention to give to it. Of course, I could have just called this shelf 4 and that 5. The shelf 1 video was a massive 45 minutes long, shelf 2 was at about 9 minutes, shelf 3 was about 20 minutes, so I really have no idea how long this is going to take me. At this point of time, you know much better than I do how long this video is. So having been through all of that, let's dive into shelf number 5. Right at the top of the shelf, we have some hardcover deluxe editions from Image Comics, including Beowulf, which is a large hardcover from Image, larger than even the Titan edition, which itself is slightly taller than the regular deluxe editions. Beowulf by Santiago Garcia and David Rubin is a handsome adaptation of the classic story, and the large deluxe format is ideal for this particular version. Then we have the Titan edition of I Kill Giants by Joe Kelly and J.M. Ken Nomura, a terrific book which handles some very delicate things exceptionally well, with a mixture of fantasy and reality that is quite unique, I think, and definitely worth checking out if you haven't read it. Then we have a couple of deluxe editions of Saga. I was collecting Saga in the trade paperbacks, really enjoying it. I was even looking at the single issues when they started coming out with these deluxe hardcovers, which I liked so much that I switched over from the trades to the hardcovers. So I no longer collect the single issues, I no longer collect the trades. I'm just waiting for volume 3 to continue reading Saga. Similarly with Descender, we saw some trade paperbacks of Descender over on shelf 1. I really enjoyed this series by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and so decided to pursue it further in the deluxe hardcovers. Then tucked in over here is A City in Sight by Tillie Walden, which after I read Spinning, which I showed on shelf 3, I was looking for everything by Tillie Walden I could find, and A City Inside is a slim little early work of hers that is also pretty good. It's not as substantial as Spinning is, but it's much smaller and lighter, but impressive nevertheless. Then for some reason I have a trade paperback of Groo, Friends and Foes, followed by 3 of the hardcover, larger sized color editions of Scott Pilgrim. I'm a fan of Scott Pilgrim. I have all 6 of the original black and white smaller digest sized volumes. I was interested when these came out. I wasn't sure if I would like them. I got volume 1. I quite enjoyed the coloring and I like the larger format as well. Of course, it's hardcover. I'm a fan of having different kinds of versions and different takes on the same material, so I've decided to collect these. I'm in no hurry though, so I've gathered volumes 1, 2 and 3 and hoping to get 4, 5 and 6 eventually. And then the last things we have on this top shelf are actually single issues of Saga, starting with Saga 1, and then it's all of them until issue 36. So I've got issues 1 through 36 in the single issues. I used to have the trade paperbacks, but I sold them once I decided to keep collecting Saga in the deluxe hardcover. Moving down to the second shelf, we have more hardcovers, this time from Dark Horse and Humanoids, and as well as a couple of Image comics. So we have Avatar: The Last Airbender comics in the library editions. The 4 of them over here are The Promise, The Search, The Rift, and Smoke and Shadow. These follow directly from the end of the television show, Avatar: The Last Airbender, an excellent TV show. I didn't believe it until I saw it, how good a Nickelodeon animated show was. And I was such a fan of it that I wanted to follow it in the comics. However, I haven't read more than half of The Promise, to be absolutely honest. My wife has read all of them. She loved the first one so much that we immediately got the other 3 so that she could continue reading uninterrupted. And she's as big a fan of the show as I am, and she says they're excellent. And I've also heard excellent things about them, so I'm glad to have them. I need to get to them, but if they're half as good as the show, and actually the half that I did read of The Promise was very promising. Jean Luen Yang writes all 4 of these alongside the original creators, so it's good pedigree writing, and they really did sound like characters from the show. So if you're a fan of the show, I'm pretty sure these will hit the mark. I'll have to see how they are as standalone comics without the fandom though, which is what I'm a little concerned about, but again, I hear nothing but good things. The World of Edena is a recent publication by Dark Horse. They seem to be interested in bringing out the works of Mobius, which is only good news for what is coming in the future. Right now we've got the World of Edena and Inside Mobius in a couple of different volumes that I haven't yet collected. Then we get to Humanoids books, also featuring the art of Mobius. This is Madwoman of the Sacred Heart, written by Jodorowsky, whose most famous collaboration with Mobius is, of course, the Incal. This is a long-awaited reprint. It was very difficult to get the Incal just a couple of years ago, so it's a good thing that Humanoids reprinted this book. I was finally able to get my hands on it and read it in book form rather than just seeing scans online, and it did not disappoint as far as the art and the world building is concerned. I'm less enamored with the story, but with art like Mobius's in the Incal, you can't really complain. Carthago is a book that took me by surprise. I thought it was primarily about a megalodon, and even though it is, it deals with a lot of other monsters, but in a very realistic and scientific way, making for very thrilling adventure stories. So that's Carthago, and the sequel volume, Carthago Adventures, both highly recommended European comics with a great sense of style and adventure. And this is probably the first Humanoids book I ever bought, a volume of Monsieur Jean, The Singles Theory by Dupuy and Barbarian, who we saw on shelf 3 in the Drawn and Quarterly books, Get a Life and Maybe Later. This is something I got after reading those 2 books and liking what I'd seen of Dupuy and Barbarian in the D&Q books. This is in duotone, so it's in blue and white. It's neither color nor single color like some of their other works, and is a great addition to collection of Monsieur Jean stories by Dupuy and Barbarian. And then we have 2 volumes of Image's Invincible, the Ultimate Collection, which is the form in which I've finally decided to start reading Invincible. I've heard a lot of great things about the series, and I just started last year, volume 1 and volume 2 down. I'm enjoying it. I'm ready for volume 3. And finally on the shelf, Hand Drying in America by Ben Catchor. It's a little difficult to encapsulate Ben Catchor in a quick video like this. You should definitely check him out. A very interesting comic book artist, and you've probably seen his work in magazines and in other places, even if you haven't read any of his indie comic books. Great stuff, and Hand Drying in America has made me thirsty for reading more. There are a couple of books of his out there that I know I want, and I can't wait to get to them. The third shelf has this Marvel hardcover that's sneaked in somehow. The Superior Foes of Spider-Man Omnibus, collecting both volumes by Nick Spencer and Steve Lieber. I'd heard a lot of good things about this comic. I picked this up on sale, and I've got to say I was a little disappointed. Maybe it was built up too much for me, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. I appreciated the humor they were going for. I appreciate the sideways look at it, but it just didn't do it for me, which is a pity because I really wanted to like it. Then we return to Image, publishing Peter Panzerfaust Deluxe Edition Volume 1, the Peter Pan story told as a resistance to Nazi occupation. It was very interesting, but it sort of hangs off in the middle. I don't see Volume 2, and I think when I try to look it up, it's not going to happen because Volume 1 didn't sell well or something like that. So I don't have the single issues. I don't know how the story ends, but it was quite interesting, and I quite enjoyed Peter Panzerfaust. Casanova, Luxuria, the first volumes deluxe edition. I picked this up because of Gabriel Ba of the Ba and Moon brothers, who did Day Tripper, which I really liked. This was interesting, but I couldn't really get into it. I did get into Chew by John Layman and Rob Guillory. These are the first 2 trade paperbacks I got signed by John Layman when he was at Comic-Con New Delhi, and volumes 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to complete the series I have in the hardcover Omnivore editions, which are my favorite editions. I've seen the Smorgasbord editions, which are much larger, but I really like the Omnivore editions. Because my first 2 are signed, I never got volume 1 of the Omnivore edition, but one of these days I'm probably going to give in and get it just to have them right next to each other. Then the 2 deluxe volumes of Fatale by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. 2 volumes of the deluxe edition of The Wicked and the Divine, the first deluxe edition of Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan, whose trade paperbacks we saw on shelf 1. Again, like Descender, like Saga, like The Wicked and the Divine, something I've decided to pursue in the hardcover special editions from now on. And then right at the end, 2 very new additions to my collection, Lazarus, the first collection, and the second collection. I've heard a lot about Lazarus for many years, and I was glad to finally pick these up at a very good price from someone selling them online. I haven't gotten to them yet, but they're on the list. And then finally the bottom shelf, which does contain a number of volumes that I have not yet been able to get to. There's Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 9, Volumes 1 and 2 in the library editions. Season 9 was a much shorter season than Season 8, which I really enjoyed in comics form and in the library editions on another shelf. So I picked up Season 9, but I have not yet started them. And here are some volumes of the EC archives brought out by Gemstone, but I think they either went out of business or sold these titles without publishing anymore. So there's the Vault of Horror, Volume 1, Tales from the Crypt, Volumes 2 and 3, Two-Fisted Tales, Volume 1 and 2, and Weird Science, Volumes 1, 2, and 3. I love these old EC comics. I love the artwork, I love the colors, I love the kind of Twilight Zone Crypt Keeper storytelling that they had. I read them when I was a kid, and I was glad to find that they were still appealing as an adult. So I'm really glad to have these early volumes. I think IDW got the rights and finished publishing this series, so I'll have to look into that, because I would love to get all the volumes in the EC archives, which I think are great collections of that old material. And finally, the Planetary Omnibus, which I picked up a couple of months ago on sale. I've heard so much about Planetary. I was looking to get the 6 or 7 volumes separately, but they were just very hard to get, and I succumbed and got the omnibus in spite of my resistance to big, thick omnibuses of this size. Hopefully, I'm not discouraged by that size for much longer and can get to the story that I've heard so much about. And that brings us to the end of Shelf 5. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like below to let me know. Or better still, comment, question. If you want a closer look at any of these books, leave those requests all in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I make a new upload. This is For the Love of Comics. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you at Shelf 4.